Well, we want to start because it's 12:05 and we want to be respectful of your time. But first of all, we want to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're starting a number of career-related events this semester. We want to make sure that you feel supported and well advised in your job searching efforts. We know that this is a priority for most of you, and it's a pleasure for us to continue working with you at the International Comparative Law Program. For those that don't know me, my name is Rosa Celorio. I'm actually the dean of the program, and we have Professor Leah Calabro here, who will introduce herself shortly. But I just wanted to tell you that today this is a very informal discussion that we're having with you. We will have a space for questions and answers too, and we wanted to kind of go over with you some details and tips and insights on how to pursue your search, especially for internships, because I know that a lot of you are looking for internships right now, but also jobs after you graduate as well. And we're also going to go over a little bit how to craft cover letters, how to craft CVs, and other documents when you are applying for jobs. I also wanted to tell you that we're going to start having career office hours per month. I'm going to have a few hours per month. Also, Professor Calabro is going to have a few hours per month. And it's a good opportunity for you to come to talk to us individually about with any career questions that you have. You can even come and bring your cover letter, your CV. We'll be happy to look at it. But it's a way also for you to be able to have a resource, when it comes to your job searching efforts as well. Okay? So again, thank you for being here. We have lunch, so please make sure that you get lunch. And I will pass it on to Professor Calabro, right?
Okay. A lot of people are going to be watching the recording, so I want to make sure that we're both audible on that. Okay, hi everyone. I think I know a lot of you, but as Dean Celorio said, my name is Professor Calabro. I'm the Visiting Associate Professor and Fellow for the International Comparative Law Program. I very recently was in your shoes, so I'm very familiar with the pressure of finding a job and the whole process. So I'm going to kick us off by talking about the strategic approach to applying. If the computer cooperates. One second.
If you want to start,
I don't know what this. Oh, there we go.
I can help you if you want.
We got it. We got it. We're back on. We're going. Okay. We're good.
Okay, good.
All right. So basically, to start, utilize your current network. So talk to your peers, talk to your teachers, talk to alumni. They're really the most basic way that you can access support from the start. You can ask for advice on how they got their job search started. You can ask for advice on what organizations they've applied for, what they recommend. Professors, especially the adjuncts, are a really, really great resource because they're actively in the field and they know, okay, these are the organizations that are going to be doing what you're interested in doing. So those are really good people to talk to just kind of focus your search a little bit right from the start. And then once you get that out of the way, you can start building a network. So the second step to this process is to grow your network. You should attend events at GW and in the wider DC community. You guys are in a great, great spot to take advantage of especially international law organizations, IGOs, NGOs, State Department. All of these places are really, really great resources in the area, and we have a lot of international focus groups and interest groups that host events, host networking events. So that's a really, really important thing to be doing while you're still a student. Additionally, there's student memberships and prices for pretty much anything that costs money, so take advantage of that. The American Society of International Law, I know many of you have been to events there, I've seen you there. That is a really, really great resource. We are academic partners with them, so we do get discounted memberships there and prices at their events. Their annual meeting is coming up in March. There are going to be hundreds of practitioners, academics, you name it, there. So I highly recommend you all go to some of those events because you can meet so many people who are really there to they're there to meet you. Like, they want to meet students, they want to interact with you, figure out, okay, what is their long-term goal? We're here to help. I mean, there are so many practitioners and academics that have helped me along the way just from meeting them once or twice. So I can't stress enough that you're not burdening people by going up and asking for advice. That's what we are here for. Additionally, informational interviews, that is one of the best things I've ever done in my entire career. Talking to people who have jobs that you think you are interested in can reveal a lot, because they might tell you that the reality of the job is the complete opposite of what you thought it would be, and then you don't need to waste your time applying for jobs in that realm. They could also tell you that it's exactly what you want to do, and then you know to focus in that area. So, and they're also a resource. I've had many people ask me to send my resume, and then they send me organizations that they think I would be a good match at. So Googling different organizations, you can look just in DC. I'm trying to think, like Robert F. Kennedy Center for Human Rights. There's so many different places where they have fellows and other attorneys working that are really, really excited to talk to students. And World Bank, we have a great relationship with them, so you can reach out to alumni and practitioners there who are happy to talk to you, look at your resume, offer advice on where you should be focusing your search. And there's just no pressure. I mean, I feel like as someone who is way more introverted, I do not enjoy networking events. I do not thrive in that environment, walking around, talking to a bunch of strangers. So when you're doing an informational interview, it's one-on-one. You're actually getting to know the person. You're getting to know their characteristics. And that's also kind of a good way to see, okay, what's the culture going to be like at this place? Because if you connect with this person, that's another good thing to know going into the process of, okay, yeah, I really do want to work at this organization. Because remember, you guys are gathering information just as much as the hiring committees are. It's important that you're going into the process thinking about what you want. What do you want out of this job? What kind of practice area are you focusing on? What kind of environment are you looking for? That's just as important as getting a job. So that brings me to making an application plan. So as you're going through the growing your network process, you're talking to people, you're gathering information about what kind of jobs they have, what you might want. You're thinking about what practice area do I want to focus on. You should make a plan to kind of guide you in your application process, because there are a lot of jobs out there and you have to be strategic about how you approach it. So be aware of your limiting criteria. Do you have a pay scale that you need? Are you limiting yourself to a geographic location? Do you want to stay in DC? Are you open to general US? Are you open to the entire world? Those are all things that you need to take into consideration. And then also, what do you want to focus on? Human rights? Do you want to focus on trade? Do you want to focus on international business? Really important things to know. Do you want a firm? Do you want an IGO, NGO? Very different experiences at both of those places. If you don't care, you can totally apply to all of the options, but just be aware of your personal preferences going into this process. So once you have that, then use all of the databases at your disposal. So there's LinkedIn, there's Indeed, use GW Core, which I'm sure you've all been on, but definitely use things other than just that, because there's a lot more out there. And you can also set like notifications. So when a new job is posted, you'll get an email and then you can immediately go on and apply. And that has been super helpful for me in my own process, because it gets overwhelming to be constantly looking at all these things and figuring out what are my options. So set those job alerts. And then I also think it's a good idea to set a chunk of time every week to go through these databases and look to see what's new. Flag the things that you want to apply for. If you can't apply for them right in that moment, then make sure that you have another time during the week that you can go back to them. Also, make sure you put in your calendar deadlines. That's really important. And just make sure that you're being really, really strategic and purposeful in how you're approaching this whole process. So once you have gone through to see all of the applications and the job postings, then you have to go in and tailor your application materials, which we'll talk about in a second. So, but generally that just means making sure your resume, your cover letter, and your writing sample, if they ask for one, are really specifically showing what they are looking for at that position. And then just apply. It honestly is a numbers game. the more applications you send out, the more likely you are to get an interview, the more likely you are to get a second interview, the more likely you are to get the job. So I know that this is daunting and it takes so much time. Applying for a job is a full-time job. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that before, but it is. So that is just know going into this that this is going to be a huge, huge time commitment. But it will pay off and you will succeed. You will all get jobs. You're coming from a great institution. You are all incredibly smart and accomplished and very competent, so I'm sure you're going to get a really, really great job. So also take a deep breath and relax about it too. That's important. Don't get too stressed. Okay, and with that.
Thank you so much. I think that's actually very wise advice, okay? I just wanted to compliment a little bit, on some aspects. I want to talk about internships in particular because I know many of you are looking for internships and externships right now. But I also want to talk about cover letters and resumes and writing samples and some tips of how to strengthen your CV, how to have a CV that's really appealing, especially for those international law employers and employers in your area of the law. So a few things about internships. A lot of students are shocked when I tell them that a lot of internship programs actually do serious selection processes. You don't necessarily need a contract in order to get into a lot of organizations. I'll give you my example. Everything, all of my career in international law started at the United Nations Development Fund for Women, and I did what Professor Calabro just recommended. I actually emailed my CV to all these United Nations entities around the world, and I got this invitation to be an intern in their office in Ecuador, and that's what started everything. I had no contacts. I'm from Puerto Rico, very far away from the field of international law, but I started building contacts over the years and my own network. And I think what Professor Calabro said is very important. Not everybody's a great networker, right? I mean, it can be very difficult to be a good networker, but there's different kinds of networking. One is to go to cocktails and talk to people. Another one is to develop a reputation for your work, to work on very good technical products that have your name on them, that you can show and you can discuss, that you develop an aura around you as a practitioner, okay? So a lot of the recommendations that I have are tailored to that particular aspect as well. A few things. Washington, D.C. is amazing because you have many sectors that you can apply to. You have international organizations, you have civil society organizations, you have the federal government, you have think tanks. There's a wide variety of employers, but I always tell students, it's very smart, especially when you're trying to pursue a career in international law, to go beyond Washington, D.C. A lot of the best jobs are not here. A lot of the best jobs are here, a lot of the best jobs are not here. I didn't start in Washington, D.C., even though I went to college in Washington, D.C. I actually started in Ecuador, then went to New York, then went to Massachusetts, and then I came to Washington, D.C. So I tell students it's good to kind of broaden the reach, of your job search, because the reality is that you want really good experience, so you want to make sure you get it, right? And this is not necessarily where you're going to get it, even though some of you will get it. Okay, so it's good to have a broad reach when it comes to your job search. The other thing that, can be super, super helpful, and Professor Calabro already talked about this, is informational interviews. When you are requesting an informational interview, it's very important not to ask for a job in an informational interview. I always tell students, practitioners in general do not like having meetings where people ask them for jobs because they can't give you a job more often than not. Right? When I was a practitioner, I wish I could have given a job, to all the people that I had informational interviews with, but I did not have that kind of capacity. Even the most influential people don't have that capacity, okay? So usually you want to use an informational interview to get information about that field, the way that place works, how application processes work, for example. You want to be as informed as possible, and you also want to give a really good impression, because I do know a lot of people that have gotten jobs through informational interviews. But it's not a good idea to ask for a job directly. And I know that there's a lot of temptation to do that, but most practitioners cannot really help you in that way, and it's not something that helps you build a relationship with that practitioner either, okay? So it's something to keep in mind. The other thing that's very important is get to know your professors at the law school. One thing that we have in GW that's amazing is that we have a huge number of adjunct law professors who work in all these organizations, in the DC area. Many of them are incredibly well connected. Many of them can actually help you as recommenders. Good recommendations go very far. I have participated in at least 100 employee selection processes in my career. In all of them, I have called at least 5 references to make sure that the person can work well, and the references have been very influential in my decision, right? So you want to make sure you develop a relationship with your professors. It's good that you have a good impression, that you leave a good impression, because these connections can take you very far. I have professors from my law school experience 20 years ago that still serve as recommenders when I'm looking for jobs. Okay, so it's very important, to keep all of this in mind. I always tell students, be very nice to your professors, because you don't know what they may do for you in the future, even if you're mad at your grades. Okay, very important. Okay, especially this is part of the networking. You start here at the law school. And the other thing is, remember that we have a lot of career-related events. We actually have a practitioner networking event that we're having on March 2nd. Come to those events. It's an opportunity for you to meet practitioners, to sit down with them, to talk to them. So make sure that you take advantage of those opportunities as well, okay? A few things. I want to talk a little bit about CVs, and curriculum vitae. And it's very interesting because there's no specific rule of how to do a CV, but one thing that I can tell you is that for most employers, clarity of presentation of information is extremely important. Most employers have maybe 1 second to look at your CV. So you want to make sure that your CV is very well presented, it's very clear, right? That is very well grammatically checked. This is extremely important. You would be surprised at the amount of CVs that I have reviewed that have grammar mistakes. Huge turnoff, right? If you are an employer. So it's something to keep in mind. You want to highlight your wonderful education. You are a student in this institution. This is a huge credential for you. So you want to start with that, with your education and then your experiences. A few things about your education, okay? There's a lot of, it's not just listing whether you're a JD student or an LLM student. If you're pursuing concentrations, this is extremely important. There's a reason why we started creating concentrations, and it's because a lot of employers find them very coveted. They like students that already have a background on international and comparative law. We have 2 JD concentrations, one on international and comparative law, one on international business law, and we have 2 LLM concentrations, one on international human rights, one on international arbitration. All of that is very important to showcase in your CV. The other thing is any honors, of course, any grades, especially if you have really good grades, but it's not the only criteria that employers, look at. So please don't panic if your grades are not what you want them to be. Tons of people that are very successful out there did not do well in law school. So take a deep breath, as Professor Calabro said, when it comes to grades. But if you have them, if you got honors, if you're at the top of your class, of course, you should put that in your CV. Make sure you include courses. This is important. If you have taken specific courses on specific subject matter at the law school that's related to your employer, it's important to include those. If you have been part of law school associations, journals, one thing, for example, that Professor Calabro does tremendously in her CV, I reviewed her CV recently, right? Is that when you look at her resume, she has such a level of engagement with international law since young, When you look at that CV, she's obviously super passionate about the area. And she was a member of the International Law Society. She did moot court, She did all these activities at the law school that obviously indicated that this was a person with a promise, with a promising future in this area. All of that is very important. Scholarships. Many of you are here on scholarships. Your Fulbright scholars, your Merit scholars, your Bergendal scholars. That's very important. That's already merit, so make sure you include that in your CV as well. The other thing is make sure that you list all pertinent internships and consultancies and any other forms of employment, that you have pursued. This is all extremely important. If you have done a research assistantship at the law school or participated in a research project or done anything at the law school that could be considered, relevant to that work, I would also include that in your CV as well. Publications, it's really interesting because when you're a student, you don't necessarily think of publications because you're thinking about your courses, your grades, potential jobs, etc. Publications are huge in the area of international law. Most well-known experts have a very lengthy life, a very lengthy publication life, right? And what I mean by publications is not just law reviews, although law reviews are great and they're very appreciated. Blogs, for example, like different kinds of writings and publications, commentary, op-eds in the area of international law. It's very important for you to start developing your what we call the scholarly voice, your actual voice as a practitioner, right? Your potential influence as a practitioner. This is extremely important in CV. When I look at young person CVs, if I see a lot of publications, I'm like, this is a person that, may have an influential voice in the future, may make important contributions. So it's important to start working. And I tell students, a lot of you are in paper courses. Some of you are in my paper courses and you're wonderful writers, right? So if you're working on a paper after the course is done, you can actually present that paper for publication. And we actually have a lot of students with really good journal placements, So it's something to think about, and it does make a resume much more appealing. Other skills are very important, like languages, for example, if you have them. Please don't panic if you don't have languages. The reality is that international law has spaces for people that have languages and spaces for people that don't speak languages. So if you have them, of course, include them. A note on languages, though. If you are going to include your languages, make sure that you speak them fluently, that you can really work on the language. The reality is that you will be tested on your languages in many employers. You don't want to be in an interview and you say, oh yes, I have working knowledge of Spanish, and then you stumble all over the questions. It's best to be honest, right? Basic proficiency, or, make sure that you're very careful, with the way you present your languages, especially if you have less than fluency or proficiency. If you include it, make sure that you can carry on a conversation well in the language, okay? And remember, you have a lot of other things in your resume aside from languages, so keep that in mind. And in terms of cover letters, a lot of students ask about cover letters, and it's a great question. You want to use the cover letter to highlight aspects that are not necessarily so evident from your CV, right? Or your credentials or your education. Why are you interested in this job? Why are you passionate about this area of the law? I used to do, for example, a lot of recruitment in the area of human rights. And for me, that passion and commitment was extremely important. I didn't want to hire a student, or a potential candidate that was not passionate about the area, because I knew that they were going to be dealing with a lot of complexity. And I didn't want to hire somebody that was going to be turned off, by that complexity. I wanted somebody that was committed to the area. So all of that is very important. Make sure that you research the organization very well. It's good to connect a bit, to what the organization is doing and why you think your credentials, can be appealing for that particular, for that particular organization. If you are pursuing a concentration in a specific area like international, I would also delve into that in the cover letter. Why did you pursue or tailor your studies to this particular area of the law? Your own personal background can be very useful as well, depending on the position as well, and whatever you're comfortable sharing in that. But I wouldn't make a cover letter too long. One page cover letter, one page CV for now, right? I know that in academia, for example, we love CVs that are 10 pages or more, right? But the reality is that when you navigate employment out there, it's best to have shorter materials, okay? Assuming that there's not going to be necessarily so much time to review them, okay? Writing samples. I always tell students, make sure that you use a writing sample that really reflects your own work, right? That is something that hasn't been heavily edited by others, so that it's really a sample of your work, right? You have to trust your writing. You have to trust that your writing is going to be appealing for employers. It's good to have writing samples that have good topics of conversation, right? I've been in many interviews that I ask the candidate about their writing sample. Why did you pick that specific topic, especially if it's topics, that are relevant, that are contemporary. It can be a really good topic for an interview. Make sure that they're very well written and that they're very well proofread. This is very, very important. Try to eliminate as many grammar mistakes as you can, and it's so interesting because, we're all super busy, right? It just leaves such a bad impression when there's grammar mistakes. It shows that it's somebody that might not be careful to detail, might not have attention to detail. So you want to make sure that anything that you present to an employer is very, very well edited. And remember that we have a writing center. You can always, for example, schedule an appointment with the writing center and get some tips, on how to improve your writing sample as well. Make sure that it's very well researched too, that it shows that you have that research capacity. When it comes to specific topics, that's something that's very valued by a lot of employers. And make sure that the topic is not too controversial, okay, or too polarizing, right? We all are passionate, right? And we all want to be in employers, that give us the space, right, to display those passions. But you don't want to disqualify yourself so early, okay? So you want to make sure that you don't pick something that's super, super, super polarizing to a point that you may get disqualified early on. Okay, so remember, you're trying to get through a threshold where you actually get to an interview and you can impress them, right? So, and when you're in the interview, you're also interviewing them, right? So you can ask questions, you can make sure, that this position aligns with your thoughts and your beliefs, but just make sure that you don't disqualify yourself, so early on. So the writing sample is extremely important, okay? Other preparation tips, and then I want to make sure that you have time for questions. Very, 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 very important to start at the law school level to work on your credentials. And remember, we have a lot of opportunities to do that, especially in the area of international law. Join the International Law Society. I see Sushan back there, who has been doing tremendous work reviving our International Arbitration Student Association. Join him in his efforts. All of this is a really good credential for you, in your CV. It says, I'm a student, that I am tailoring my work and my expertise to this area of the law. So it's really good to join activities at the law school, okay? The other thing that's really, really, really important is remember your coursework, right? And that's why it's very important to really think strongly about these concentrations. The reality is that I used to recruit a lot outside of the law school. As soon as I saw concentration in human rights, I was like, great. I would weed out on the basis of that. I was like, that means that they already have a background knowledge on this, that this is something that they're aspiring to do. So I don't have to bother with candidates that are not concentrating in the area, because I don't want any sort of doubt. I didn't want doubts, that it was a candidate that really wanted to pursue human rights, right? So if you are interested in the area of international law in particular, I really encourage you to think very seriously about pursuing a concentration, okay? The Oxford program. We have this amazing program during the summer, in July. Huge credential on your CV, Try to think of opportunities like that add credentials to your CV, okay? Remember publishing. And that doesn't mean only working on law review articles, but for example, associations like ASO that Professor Calabro mentioned. ASO has a lot of opportunities to publish small articles. They have, for example, a publication called ASO Insights, for example, that you can actually present proposals for small articles. It's good to think about one or two issues that you really want to write about and start writing about them, because these are good credentials in your resume, okay? The other thing, another tip is you have to look at your credentials and figure out where you would be stronger at, okay? I'll give you an example. I'm from Puerto Rico, which means that by circumstance, I'm bilingual. I grew up speaking Spanish and English. So that automatically put me in contention for Latin American jobs. And I knew it too, okay? And I pursued them. I was like, oh, I'm fluent in Spanish. This could be an area of the law that could find me appealing. And that's what happened, Like most of especially my early jobs were related to Latin America because I was fluent in Spanish, right? So it's good to think about, look at your CV and look at what you have and what you bring to the table and try to match that with potential employers, right? That could be, interested in those particular skills. For example, if you served in the armed forces, for example, we have a lot of veteran students that have done amazing work. The federal government, huge, huge. They love that, they respect it, and they should. It's amazing experience, So it's something to think about, that it's important to look at your background and be like, what do I bring to the table, and who could be interested in what I bring to the table, right? So I always tell students, if you speak several languages, probably the World Bank will find you very appealing, right? If you have specific U.S. experience related to international affairs and other issues, maybe the federal government is a better fit for you, right? So it's good to think about, where you can, what the fit could be, right? Because employers look at this, right? When they're hiring, and also you want to be in employers in the future that value you. I always tell students, there's employers that value more JDs, there's employers that value more LLMs. You don't want to be in an organization in the long term that doesn't value what you bring to the table. I have been in both. I have been in organizations that value JDs tremendously. I have a JD. And I have been in organizations that value the LLM more. You don't want to be seated at a table where they look down at JDs, especially after all the work that you have done. And you don't want to be in an organization that doesn't value LLMs, especially after all the work that you have done, okay? So it's important also to do all of that research, and I'm always telling students, self-confidence starts at the law school level. You have to value yourself because you won't always have that external valuing, okay? So it's important to start practicing now, and if you have a self-confidence problem, come and see us, okay? We will help you with that. But it's very important when you're out there looking for jobs. Okay? You all have incredible potential, and you are graduating from one of the best law schools in the United States, and you're extremely smart, and never doubt it, okay? Even if you're having difficulty in the job search, okay? Other things, joining the American Society of International Law as a student member is only $30. We're academic partners. We recommend that you all join it. You should all join it. We will send you the code. You can get involved in the interest groups. They have this fabulous interest groups. For example, if you want to do international business or international arbitration or international trade or international human rights, they have all these interest groups where you get to meet all these practitioners. You can even run for leadership positions. It's really great, and it's $30 because we're academic partners, right? And it's a very easy way to get to know people, get your name out there. You can put this in your resume that you're a member of the American Society of International Law. Right now, I'm doing my best to make sure that I can bring a lot of you to the ASO annual meeting, so we will send a lot of information to you on that soon. But it's a very easy way to get involved in the field and start, to start making your mark in the field, okay? When it comes to internships, again, don't target only Washington, D.C. There's tons of organizations in Geneva, in New York, abroad that do tremendous work. And remember that not all internships are in person now. You can do also remote internships, which is beautiful. It's one of the silver linings, right, of the tragedies and all of the difficulties that we've had, with the pandemic in the last few years. Now there's more possibilities, right, in that sense. So it's something to think about. Don't limit yourself to only the in-person, okay? Be flexible. And I know this is heartbreaking. A lot of students are like, no, I want to work in a law firm, and I came to law school for that. And if I don't work in a law firm, this is a waste of my time. That's not how international law works. Most of us, we have done a zigzag. We just have, right? And we have ended in these beautiful jobs. I mean, I love what we're doing, right? But it's been a zigzag. It hasn't always been a straightforward line or a linear line, right? So it's good to be flexible, to be strategic, to be open to surprises, to be open to what can come your way that you may enjoy but you weren't necessarily thinking about, okay? So it's extremely, extremely important to develop that skill. Domestic experiences are very important too. And a lot of students, that's another thing. A lot of students are like, I want to graduate and I want my super high level international law job when I graduate. Most of the most coveted and important and influential international law experts of our time started in domestic positions, in US positions or in their own countries, right? So don't shy away from those national jobs, because sometimes you even need them, to be able to do something amazing later. I'll give you one example. Professor Calabro is in the area of international criminal law. A lot of the prosecutors in the ICC and the ICTY and the ICTR were actually criminal prosecutors first in their countries, and for a long time, before they became international criminal law prosecutors, okay? So don't shy away from those national experiences. For example, a U.S. clerkship takes you super far. You can actually do amazing things with a U.S. clerkship, even though it's a nationally kind of related job. Most very well-known international law practitioners, many of them have done U.S. clerkships. So don't shy away from those national jobs, because they're not necessarily a bad thing at all, when it comes to your future international law career. And it's good to combine two. So keep that in mind. You don't necessarily need to have a career that's all international law. You can also have combinations, and there's different ways of doing international affairs jobs. I'm going to stop there because I've spoken too much, but I want to make sure that you have questions. And remember that we're here to support you. We're doing these sessions because we want you to feel very supported in this very difficult process. We've all been here, we've done this, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be fine. It's just that it takes careful preparation and patience, and we're here to help you. And also, we're going to do career office hours. So we hope that you come and see us. The idea is that you come with your CV and your resume and any questions that you have, so that we can give you advice on how to pursue your job search. Okay? Question over there, Michael.
So yeah, we all know tomorrow is a big day, and I wanted to ask you, do you have any tips on how to make quite the impression on employers when you meet them live? I'm not talking about an informational interview. I'm talking when you are there and it's evident that's the reason why you're there.
I think, Michele, researching the organization and the field very well is very important. When you're conducting an interview, and you sit with a person that knows the work very well, that has done the research, it's really impressive, The other thing is, it's important to be yourself too, The reality is that there's this myth that you have to go to these interviews and be super serious and stale and and the reality is that most interviewers like seeing some personality. They want to get a sense of whether you're going to be a good fit for them, right? So that's very important too. And I have to say, we work so much with so many of you. You have great personalities. Don't shy away from showing a little bit of that, in an interview, because the reality is that, especially if you show personality and the interviewer doesn't call you back, then you don't want to work there either. You don't want to be in a place that you cannot show who you are, right? This is going to be your employment place, right? So it's something to think about as well, and ask a lot of questions. Remember, you're interviewing them too, right? When you are in an interview, it's not just about them giving you an opportunity. You're trying to get a sense also of whether this is going to be a good fit, It's important for you to also bring 2 or 3 questions, and if they give you the opportunity, you ask your questions, make sure you carefully think about them, that they're good questions, right? But it's important to be, also to show that you're thinking about this, that you're taking this very seriously,
Just to add to that, so one of my bosses at one of my first internships in law school told me that when she interviews, she thinks, is this someone that I wouldn't mind being stuck at an airport with? And that is one of her biggest criteria in hiring. So be personable, be friendly, be comfortable as much as you can. I know it's very nerve-wracking, but that really, if you have a connection on a personal level with that person, you're way more likely to get hired, even if you don't have the same criteria and credentials as the next person. But if they didn't connect with them as much, you're getting the job. And then to piggyback off of, what was the last thing you said? Oh, the questions. Questions are really important. I also know that sometimes if a candidate doesn't ask any, they will not get a call back. So definitely think through that. I highly recommend a question about mentorship, because that's important for you to know. Is there training aspects that come with this job? Am I going to have a direct supervisor that will work with me? Because that's really key to your career development. So I think that's what I'll add there. Okay.
recruiter, do you give more consideration to the resume or the cover letter? Because I've heard recruiters say like, I only look at the cover letter and resume very little.
That's a great question. CV. For me, it's the CV.
Okay.
You can have, I have to say, I must confess, you can have a beautiful cover letter, right? But if I don't see something that I find is a good fit in the CV, it's going to be very difficult to get a call. And I've heard this from a lot of employers because they don't necessarily have the time. Part of the problem is time, that they're very time constrained, right? And remember that the initial weeding out might not even be done by those who are going to recruit you. It might be done by a human resources office. That's the thing too, right? So you have to assume that the people, that are going to, that may need to do that initial weeding out are people that are not necessarily invested in the job. So you want to make sure you include keywords in the CV. That's the thing, And this is very common in the area of international law. Like, for example, if you are applying for a job that's all public international law, but all of your CV is human rights, it doesn't mean that it's not related. It's just that you might want to make sure that you put in your CV also public international law in different places to make sure that you're not eliminated,
Yes. Could you please explore more about credentials? You were talking about the American Society of International. What others we make sure to be a part of?
I think we recommend ASOL a lot because a lot of future employers are there. So, and we have all these officials in GW that are a big part of it, right? So we know the field very well there. So we know that a lot of the employers that are usually sought after by our students are members of the American Society of International Law. This is why we recommend them. But there's other associations, of course, that you can pursue, especially specialized associations. You know what I mean? If you are interested in arbitration and trade, in business, there's other more specialized associations, that can be that can be useful, to join as well. But I always tell students, if you are going to join an association, I would try to get some sort of active role in the association, not just to watch programming or, try to get involved in an interest group, try to be actively involved in some way, right? So that you can actually profit from the association the most possible,
I'm going to add, so Washington Foreign Law Society is another good one in DC. You don't even need to be a member for a lot of these. Sometimes you can just join a listserv, and then they'll send out free, open to the public events. Like there's happy hours and other things that you can go to that don't necessarily require a membership at a lot of these places. ASOL, I think, they don't know, actually, I think for most of their events, they don't require membership either, but that's a good one to have on your resume. But these other places that maybe you don't want to spend the money for a membership, whatever it is, still look to see if they have a open to the public listserv, and you can go to other events and meet other people.
What's the name again?
Washington Foreign Law Society, yeah. You can honestly just Google whatever area of law you're interested in, Washington, D.C. organizations, and there will be tons. There are so many organizations here. Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
Regarding mock interview possibility, do we have any, is it this also this career advice office time to use for mock interview, or do we have any?
A lot of the career advising time is for you to bring your CV and your resume and actually ask questions, So that's really more what we're centering on there.
And do we have any possibility to have a mock interview?
Not at the moment, but
You can ask the Career Center.
Exactly,
I know that they do
exactly.
mock interviews. So what typically, in my experience, it has been if you have a specific job, let's say you just want practice for international law interview, find a posting. You can send it to whoever the Career Center person is that's going to be interviewing you, and they'll try to tailor questions.
I'm an LLM student, and Career Center declined me several times already.
Oh.
Oh, that's unfortunate. We can talk later.
Yeah.
Johan. That's unfortunate.
So another
Yeah.
question that I wanted to ask is there anyone taking the job of that Melanie Oren left, or the school is covering that somehow?
Dean Joshi and her team, they're working very hard. to make sure that we have a person as soon as possible. And what we're doing is each program is doing everything we can to make sure that you have proper advising and career support in the meantime. Okay?
What do you think about the follow-up emails? For example, should we reach out the future manager or HR? What do you think about that next step?
After the interview?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's always so nice to get a thank you email. So to the person that interviewed you. And you can keep it brief, you know, thank you so much for your time. You know, I just want to underscore my excitement, you know, to potentially collaborate with you. Thank you. You know, like I would leave it short and sweet, but I think it does leave like a good taste and it kind of shows professionalism too.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good idea, but not too long.
No. I will
Not
also
like 2
have-
paragraphs.
A good like piece of advice that I got on that was if something comes up in the interview where they like ask you about an article that you wrote, send them the link. Like do something that's relating back so it's not just a generic. If you can tie in something that you had like a connecting moment on in the thank you email, then they'll be like, oh, I remember, I really like that girl. So that's just a good thing to bring into that. Yeah.
Downstairs on the information thing, I saw that there was the International Legal Career Symposium today. Is that happening? And is that for like LLMs or can JDs go too?
I believe it has happened. It was between February 7th to 9th.
Oh, gotcha.
And you can contact Dean Joshi and her team for that. But it's a number of law schools in the Washington, D.C. area that organize that.
Okay, thank you. Oh, is it today still?
It's right now. Okay.
Thanks, Megan.
I want to ask, what is the perfect length of a writing sample? How many pages? And the topic also.
I think that's a great question. I wouldn't make it too long because the reality is that they're not going to read the entire writing sample. I think they're going to read the first 5 pages. So I would do like 10 pages at the most. And make sure, but the key is to make sure that it's something that you really, really are confident that it's very well written, you know? Something that you're very proud of showing, and make sure that it's something that is a good topic of discussion as well, just in case, because some interviewers do decide to start asking questions about the writing sample, so make sure that it's something that you're very proud to show. But I wouldn't make it too long.
I will add to that too. So I think 5 to 10 pages is typically if it doesn't specify. If it specifies, do exactly what they say. Include a cover letter unless they say not to, but it's really a good idea to have following the same format of your cover letter and your resume that says this is from a paper for my whatever class, or this was a brief I wrote in legal research and writing. It's like 20 pages in full length. If you want the full version, please let me know. Something along those lines, that way they know, okay, this isn't just like something she wrote just for this. And then I also would recommend having different versions. So you can tell from the job description if they're going to be requiring you to write a lot of briefs, if they're going to be requiring you to write more research colloquial things. Have different versions. So if it's a job that's looking for a brief, be able to send them a brief. If it's a job that's looking for more colloquial writing, be able to send them something that demonstrates that. If you can't do that, then just make sure that your writing sample demonstrates your knowledge in the area of law that you're going to be working in. That would be my recommendation. Yeah.
So to clarify for those office hours, are those like walk-in only, or do you recommend us like email you and like reserve those?
Yeah.
You can just walk in.
Oh, okay.
That's the idea, that you don't have to go through the whole, let me schedule an appointment, and like, you know, that you can just walk in and, you know, just come and see us.
Good to know. I also have another question. So you mentioned that GW is an academic partner of ASIL, and I was wondering if there's like a code that you can share with us
Yes.
regarding the membership registration or the conference that's coming.
Yes, we have a code that we can share with you for the membership. And if you are interested in attending, this is for everyone. She has a wonderful question. If you are interested in attending the ASIL annual meeting, send us an email. Don't register yet, because I'm trying to get the most out of this for you. Okay? So we will have information on that for you in the next 2 weeks. So don't register yet. but just send us the email, okay?
Thank you. The code for the student membership should be also
Oh, we will send you
Yeah.
it's basically an academic partner code that you can use to make sure that you only pay $30 for the membership. And we highly recommend it because at the end of the day, it's such an easy way for you to have a network, get involved in interest groups. It's something that you include in your resume. You know, it's and the programming is fantastic as well. You'll see, I mean, all these high level people in international law, you know, get to speak and participate in panels. So it's also a way for you to stay in the pulse of what's happening in international law, which is important in interviews, huh? You know, you may suddenly get a question on the State of the Union address. What did you think of the State of the Union address? You know, and it's good to kind of like at least have watched it or have a sense of what was discussed there, you know, just in case anybody asks you, right? You know, so it's good to stay in the news.
Just to add to the list of organizations, the American Bar Association also has a section on international.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, they do. Yes.
Any other questions?
I'll end it.
Yes.
Do we have, as LLM students, an opportunity to explore academic career as well?
An academic career, absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah.
We love when you pursue academic careers. And if you want to do that, of course, come and see us because we have ways to help you with that specific field in particular. Okay? So, and we fully support it. I mean, we're academics, so.
Yeah. I actually think there's an event happening at the law school about like how to become a law professor in a couple weeks. Yeah, so definitely go to that. Yeah, I mean, I'm very early on, so if you want to talk about what it's like to get into the process, happy to talk to you about that.
Amit, another thing, since you mentioned academic careers, the American Association of Law Schools, they have what they call the Faculty Appointments Register, and they do it every fall. And I believe this year, it usually opens around August, but I believe this year it might be a little bit earlier. And it's a great way for like potential professors, you know, to actually send their credentials to all the law schools in the US, you know, and to get interviews, you know, and all you need is a strong application and a really strong job talk paper, right? And if you want to talk a little bit more about that, you know, I would be happy to meet with you about that. Like it's, and we encourage, you know, students to actually, you know, graduates and alums. And the wonderful thing is that there's actually a lot of GW alums that are professors around the United States, you know? So you have good possibilities, you know?
And also, so I went to the Junior International Law Scholars Association meeting in January, and they have a happy hour at the ASOL meeting. So definitely look for that because they're a great group of people to kind of walk you through the process. They've been very helpful to me, so I recommend that. Any other questions?
Well, just to, Marielba, go ahead.
Well, this is not a question, it's just for those that are interested in internships. I saw announcement that the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights has opened the application process, and it's going to be open until February 17. So just to make sure that you guys got the information, and if you are interested, so there is a good opportunity.
Thank you.
Marielba, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And is that for the summer
Uh,
or the fall?
Summer.
Summer.
It's from June 8th to August 18th.
Can you send us the link? Because we can share it also in the listserv. If you're not in our listserv, have you been getting emails from us? If you haven't, you're not in our listserv. So let us know because we send a lot of information like this in our listserv, you know, and we will be very happy, you know, to add you. And you don't necessarily have to be in the international program for that, okay? So just let us know and we'll add you and we will send you information. And I just want to end with a note of wellness. You know, we always tell students, you know, especially when we have these career discussions, students end up very stressed out, you know, and it's important, what Professor Calabro said is very important to take care of yourselves. The reality is that you will find a job. You know, it may take some time, it may be difficult, but it doesn't mean that you will not find it, okay? So please take care of yourselves. You know, for us, your health is very, very, very important, okay? So keep that in mind. And thank you so much for attending today, and we will do more of these, okay?
Thank you.